emoji. I think that's what he said.
All right, we got to go to Dafne now in the KUAM News Zoom room because she has a furry friend with her.
You know, I apologize. Actually, we are also, we were impacted by COVID as well in our household. And so, of course, we had to isolate as well. So that's why, if you notice, I haven't had the opportunity to be actually in the office, but I have 3 dogs. We used to have 4. Unfortunately, one of our dogs passed away, and I had a couple of them kind of scruffling around on the floor. I was trying to not have them be kind of barking and stuff as we're talking. But on a more important point, though, of course, it was yesterday. It was a big day for our agency. We did actually begin to receive applications for the All Rise program beginning 7 a.m. yesterday morning, both online and as well as in person. As you know, we did run into issues with regards to the online applications in the morning. There was just a whole lot of demand on our system. And so because of that, we ran into some challenges, but we did actually at 7 a.m. or around a little bit after 7 a.m., even though there were a lot of problems with regards to our system. And of course, because of the demand on our system, we were able to have, my team was saying like a little bit after 7, there was about 40 applications already in. And in fact, I think by the time we got to 9 a.m., it was, we were at 3,000. And throughout the day, I believe our IT team was working with our vendor, and also the Office of Technology was working with our vendor. And they were, I guess, adding devices, making sure they were monitoring the stability of the system. And by the end of the day, I know there was a news report about 17,000 applications received, but that was actually just as of 2 p.m. yesterday afternoon. Updated numbers are that we had, as of a little bit after 5 p.m. yesterday, received 20,534 total applications. That was both in person and online. We received 16,175 returns that were applications that were filed online, and we received 4,359 applications that were filed either through the drive-through service or over the counter at the income tax branch. And our team is continuing to process those applications that were received manually, so we can have a good count, a good tally in terms of where we are dollar-wise. But we are still this morning accepting applications. Just so you know, I know yesterday morning, of course, given the night before, we did have some people who were parked on Route 16 since the night before that were, wanted to be one of the first filers for the All Rise application form. And, as soon as we opened at 7 in the morning, we made sure we did our best to get through the line. Probably mid-afternoon yesterday, maybe around 2:30, 3 o'clock, we did have reports from people that were driving through the drive-through line that one person said it took them about 10 minutes to get through the line. And then after that, around 3:30, I was able to get a picture of the drive-through line because we've been really monitoring it closely. And there were no vehicles at some point. And so we really saw, perhaps after mid-afternoon yesterday, a real slowdown in the applications or in the applicants that were coming through the drive-through drop-off line and through the income tax branch. Also, and again, I think we went from about 17,000 total applications to about 20,000 total applications from 2 o'clock p.m. until 5 p.m. And that was where the majority of them were actually coming from the online. In fact, probably close to 80% of our applications that we received were online. It is important, though, to note that not all the applications are A status or clean applications. So you might have submitted an application either online or by manual submission that is not considered clean or not considered A status. And we are still working to address those. They're in suspense status right now. So Bree, some of those are for individuals that may have submitted an application, but their AGI was above the threshold, so they did not qualify. Outside of that, we're still trying to assess what additional suspense reasons there are that is causing an application to be in suspense status. And that, again, is something that we're working to assess. We did regroup at the end of the day yesterday, but a lot of our team members were probably on site since 4:30, 5 o'clock. So, we didn't have a long meeting last night. This morning, again, we're going to regroup to determine, again, assess where or what the status, what those status or the reasons are for suspend status. Because, again, for somebody who is clearly ineligible because they are because of the fact that they exceeded the threshold, that's very clear. But again, we're not sure of exactly all the reasons for the suspense, and we want to make sure we review them very carefully, so that way for those individuals who perhaps it's more easy to address their suspense issue, then of course we do our best to make sure that they are eligible and that they do get a payment.
I'm sorry, Daphne, did you say how many of the applications that were submitted are on suspense status?
So you know what, probably as of yesterday afternoon, and again, it's difficult because we're still processing the manual returns. So of the online applications, perhaps I can give you perhaps around maybe there are about 15% of the applications were in suspense status. And again, it's difficult to tell the reason why that they're in suspense status. Some of them honestly could be truly ineligible, but there may be some, again, we have to determine. And so now that we have gone through what we believe was probably the kind of the larger volume in terms of people submitting applications both online and in person, we have a little bit of opportunity today to review and assess to make sure that before we make any payments that we've gone through, we've made sure people were eligible. We've tried to address any simple eligibility issues. But just to share, Bree and Chris, if your return is not A status, your tax return, meaning that if it's already in our system and it's processed, but say you have a duplicate dependent issue or you have a missing document, then you know what, your return or your application also will not be A status because it follows the status of your return. So for people who might have received 30-day notices, it's important that those should have been cleared already. Otherwise, it may prevent you from being able to receive a payment for the All Rise program.
Oh, sorry.
We had a caller this morning that was asking, how does Rev Tax determine first in, first out?
Right,
especially when you have the online filers and who had issues trying to get online, and then you had the inline filers. Like, how do you know who was number one, who was number 5?
Sure. For the online, and what the hope is, I think that for the majority of people, at least for the ones that were communicating with me about their issues with filing online, I believe that they were able to get online already and kind of remedy that situation, at least for the most part. I've even tried to communicate with at least one of the mayor's offices where, they're also seeing as well, not as many people this morning as they were seeing yesterday. So and not seeing as many issues. So in the morning yesterday, a lot of the issue was surrounding, trying to log in. But the reality is, I think by mid-morning, of course, we saw, I think by 9 a.m., 3,000 of the returns were filed online. And then through the day, we just saw the numbers climbing and climbing until after 5, of course, it was over 16,000 that were filed online. And so, I believe that at least for the most part, I hope that when people were not able to apply online initially, that they were able to remedy it. And at least for the people that I've been in communication with, even some people who have been emailing me directly, that was the case. With regards to just trying to make sure that the process is credible and that, of course, we do not have, applications or returns that we make sure that people are in the proper place in line. It's easier, of course, online because there is a stamp, in terms of the time and the date. And so you have that as your confirmation of the time and the date in terms of when you apply. We actually got asked the question yesterday, about why perhaps we may not have had remote locations. And we really contemplated, and Bree, we even talked about, the making sure everybody starts it at the same time, yesterday morning, on your show a few weeks ago. We wanted to make sure that it was, that we made sure that we keep the process as credible as possible, that we don't allow for there to be some type of a compromise in the system. And so we, of course, as we contemplated how we were going to receive this, we limited the mechanisms for filing. We didn't even allow through Dropbox or mail, which is not usual. However, because we wanted to make sure that we really have a good handle on, first in, first out, who is applying at what point you've applied during the day, so we know and we make sure again that people are in the right place in the line. We limited that, and so we're doing our best internally to keep track of it. Our team has developed a system of determining, again, when applications are received, and that's something that that we, again, work to try to make sure that it's as credible as possible so that people have confidence in the fact that we're, again, doing our best to implement this fairly.
Daph, there was a comment, I believe, this morning. We also had a caller who was talking about the validly filed and processed 2020 returns, and they had, I think, filed in May, but when they were told that their return wasn't validly filed or processed. But then we had also seen a comment here from Rosemary, who claims that the governor's office is encouraging those non-filers who filed 1040 tax after May to fill out the application manually and turn it into Rev Tax. Does this mean that they'll be paid even though the $30 million has been used up, or what? I mean, what is the status of that? Are we changing the eligibility, or is it still holding firm?
No, the eligibility holds firm, but I believe that the way that our system works is that it will error out and not allow someone who does not have a validly filed and processed return in the system. It won't allow you to file, and so. Of course, where we are in terms of processing is we're in about mid-May, and you can really tell that in terms of paying out of refunds, we're really kind of paying out refunds as soon as a return is processed. So we're in approximately mid-May. Our team has probably been working 6 days a week for a little bit over a year to make sure that we're processing for all of the programs that we have to get payments out. But we're in approximately mid-May, and again, we're doing our best to continue to process. And as I've been talking with my team. As we've been getting these questions about people who are not able to file online because they fall into this category where they have an issue because they don't have a validly filed and processed return. Yes, our team has been advising that you can submit a manual application. Now, this does not guarantee that you're going to be able to get a payment or receive a payment, but I guess it allows for there to be, if you had submitted it, at least if we are in the process now of, say you're in the borderline and you're in like May 15 or 16, and if we are at the same time processing those, at the same time that we're processing as well the applications, it is possible for those then to become newly eligible as we're processing and before we pay. So, that has been the recommendation, but, I've advised already that, of course, the number one item that is on the eligibility for the this particular All Rise program is that you have a validly filed and processed 2020 return. So it's very important, and I know we've been advising people that that's something that needs to happen, and that needs to a criteria that needs to be met in order to be able to receive payment.
Is there like a cutoff date or anything like that?
So, so the way we describe it, and of course we began talking about validly filed and processed back when we were discussing EIP, and I actually have had to regroup and remember all of the discussions that we've had. And it's very difficult, most especially when we're relying on returns, because in a perfect world, as you submit your return, it will be considered validly filed and processed. But in a situation where we are, where probably over about 90% of our filers are manual filers, it makes it difficult for us to make sure that that happens. And, Bree, one thing, I guess the way that it's best described is it's kind of like balancing out the payment as quickly as possible with, trying to get these these returns processed. If we had perhaps maybe, until end of year or several months from now to begin to make payments, then we could, probably get a lot of these returns processed. But in a situation where we're balancing out, trying to pay as quickly as we can against, trying to make sure that, again, that everybody meets the eligibility requirements, it becomes a little challenging. So, although we do understand it, I'll tell you, our team really, they do have a lot of compassion. They are very concerned about the people who may not have validly filed and processed returns. And again, we're continuing to process returns, even though we're still working to try to process these applications for All Rise. And again, try to get as many people who may be at the borderline in probably mid-May to be included if they are filing and if they are eligible.
The governor and our social media, and I think you might have mentioned it, that there's like 20,000 or so applications that were received by DRT. Do you have any idea when you think that we're going to hit that $30 million cap?
I know. So yesterday of course, if we had the same type of flow that we had yesterday, I think that, and going all the way into the end of the day, I think that probably it's possible we may have already hit it. This morning, we're still accepting applications. I actually have a meeting with our deputy director in just a few minutes where we're going to discuss exactly where we are. again, as soon as we get close to or hit that cap, we're going to be advising everyone. And as soon as we, of course, have to close the application process, we'll advise everybody as well. But at this point, we are still accepting applications. So, again, I advise people, if you are eligible and, if you have the ability to file online, go ahead and do so. My understanding is that our line at the drive-through drop-off line is not very long. And, when people have been able to get through there, it's been pretty quick all morning long. So, again, I advise you to continue to apply until we advise otherwise. And we'll definitely make sure that we let people know as soon as that happens.
Right. So we kind of talked this morning, Daph, about the joint filers, the single filers, right? We don't have a read on how many of the applications were for either, because remember the joint, I know, they get 1,600, the single get 800. So in trying to just do the math on this, I mean, we're kind of flying in the dark, right?
Right, and I'd apologize regarding that. What it is I don't have a count on how many are joint and how many are single. That's something, again, we're working to try to tally. Also, it's difficult to say where exactly we are because our team is still working to process the manually filed returns. I will share we received 4,359 manual returns, and if say it took 5 minutes to process each return, that's like 300 some hours, right? Our team is actually, they're still working to process. I think we're about a quarter of a way. What, their desire yesterday or what they wanted to accomplish yesterday was to try to get it through as many of those applications in terms of processing as soon as they could. But when I got status this morning, I think we were just at a quarter of the way in terms of processing those. So today, because, and it's nice to see that there's not as large a flow of people in terms of the volume, both online and also at our office, that our team can have the opportunity to really focus on getting these applications, the manual ones, entered into the system so we have a good final count. Because again, it's difficult to say because we can't tell how many of the manual ones are joint or how many of them are single. Also, we can't tell how many of them are A status or suspense. And we can't, we don't know the reason. So we're still, again, trying to assess all of that in addition to trying to make sure that we assess as well the reason for the suspense. And as you know, Bree and Chris, that's really important that we know what the reason for the suspense is. Because again, if it's clear eligibility issues, fine. But if there is areas where we need to look at further to make sure that our system is processing the way it should, or that we're interpreting things in the way that we should, or that there's something else that we need to look at more thoroughly, then that's something we need to do. So those are things that we're working to assess this morning.
How long is, do you have to have the email confirmation after you file online? Because people are filing and then you get the thing where it says you filed successfully, but I'm hearing people are still waiting to get that confirmation email, and there's no timestamp on where it says that you filed successfully online.
With regards to the confirmation, my understanding is some people were getting them in their spam or junk mail. So for those people who may not have received it, and this also happens with when people just create an account, with regards to that, if you could check your spam or your junk mail, it might be there. Some people were reporting that they did not receive it, but again, as long as you have a confirmation, and that confirmation is very important, that you should be able to use that.
Okay. So you don't have to worry if you don't get that confirmation email, because somebody just messaged me that they've been waiting since 11 o'clock.
My understanding again is I recommend they check their spam or their inbox, their spam or their junk mail, and that may be where it is. And I'm sorry because my dog is trying to get my attention. So
I heard you
my
say spam.
understanding is that that you check your spam or your junk mail, and if you don't have it, then of course, if you are still concerned, you can contact our customer call center. That they are able to check the status if it's received or not. So they should be able to check that. And I just suggest if you haven't received it and you checked your inbox and you're really concerned that you have not your application wasn't submitted or wasn't accepted into our system properly, then go ahead and contact us. And we're there. Our team has been there since very early this morning, since well before 7, to be able to answer your calls about that.
Daph, if DRT exhausts the $30 million and there's still qualified applicants, Do you support the governor or the legislature identifying more funding?
Something that happened this morning, and I think that was something that which you also brought up earlier, Bree, was I know, and I actually hadn't heard it directly, but I heard about, of course, the governor did have an interview on another station where she did mention that, if there was a need to find additional funding.
Wait, hold on a second, Daph.
That she
Wait,
would
Daph,
work
I'm sorry.
to do that.
Does she do interviews on other stations? Because we've repeatedly asked her to do one on this one. So she does interviews.
This morning, I understand that she did do an interview where she did actually advise that. And again, I did not hear that interview directly, so that's something, again, but I did hear that there was discussion about the possibility of, and if there was a need to find additional funding, that's something that, she would do her best to do.
Right. Okay. You didn't hear the interview because you're listening to your favorite show, The Link, right?
And I guess really,
I will tell you, I think that I actually, you know what? Honestly, I think I'm impartial to the earlier shows. I'm always on I'm always on the really early shows. The other day probably was the first time I was on a lunchtime show. I'm usually not on the radio like after about 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is that the morning shows are. But I like being up early in the morning. I like getting these done because then I could spend the rest of my afternoon or my day kind of working and all of these other stuff that I have working on.
Daph, final message here.
Wait, I just wanted to say that I know you were telling, you were mentioning to look in your spam, but the person that didn't receive the email confirmation, it wasn't in their spam folder, so I'm not sure.
Okay,
if that's something you want to.
So for that person, and again, Bree, you know what? If anybody has questions, concerns about it, I'll tell you on Monday afternoon, by Monday at 6 o'clock when our team was leaving the customer call center, our team had actually received 628 phone calls, and we only have a call center of 6 people. So they did really well. Of course, you know what that means that there were actually some people who we may not have been able to answer their calls, but we were able to answer 628 calls on Monday. And they're there. In fact, sometimes our team is answering calls before 7 because when they hear the phone ring and they're there, they want to make sure that they get to our taxpayers and they get to trying to answer people's questions. So to that individual and to anybody who has questions or concerns, you can absolutely contact our call center. If you continue to call and you have an issue, the PIN admin email address is actually being actively monitored by our customer call center supervisor. And that email address is pinadmin@revtax.guam.gov. And so for anybody who has a question about the All Rise program, if you have a question because you're not sure if you're eligible, if you have a question because you haven't received your confirmation, or another question that maybe we haven't covered this morning, feel free to email at pinadmin@revtax.guam.gov, and that's pinadmin@revtax.guam.gov. And Julie, who's our customer call center supervisor, she has been working to make sure she gets through it. I'll tell you, I think last week she says, she told me last week Monday, I got through all 1,800 emails that were in that inbox, and she does her best to clear that inbox as quickly as people send emails.
Daph, we are getting a couple comments about the website, and I don't know if it's just this individual. So just FYI, I don't know if there are issues with it again.
As far as I know, not, but we'll check it as soon as we can. I actually, this morning, a few minutes ago, earlier, I did try to get on, and I noticed I was able to get onto myguamtax.com. So for people who, if you are having issues, then, go ahead. Perhaps I will just go ahead and check that, but you can log into myguamtax.com. At least earlier I was able to. So we'll continue to check that. Just so you know, though, our IT vendor and our OTEC, our Office of Technology, is actively monitoring it. Yesterday, they were definitely actively monitoring it to make sure that we didn't cause additional stability to our whole system. So those are being monitored regularly, and again, but we will confirm that, or we will confirm check whether there is an issue with our system.
Yeah,
looks like the website's. I just hit the website a couple times and I bounced around. I checked a few pages. It looks like it's doing well.
Bree, you're good?
All right.
Yes, sorry.
Yes. No further questions, Daphne.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thanks, Daphne.
Attorney Chris Barnett. But anyway, but thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And again, you know what? We will, if at the point that we get very close to or hit this $30 million cap, of course, and we begin to cease or we cease out receiving applications, we will let everybody know. But at this point, we're still continuing to receive them, and we're going to do our best to work through them. Please contact us if you have any questions. And I want to thank the community for their patience. I want to thank my team for their continued hard work. And of course, I want to thank Governor Leon Guerrero for her continued support. And, she was on the ground yesterday just making sure that everything went well. So again, thank you so much and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Daphne.
Wow, she was on the ground. She see or talked to the Mr. Santos who waited 12 hours in line.
Oh, we got that soundbite though, but I'm going to play it. That's a good time to play this soundbite.
Yeah, Daphne, it was really kind of emotional yesterday when you saw some of them run up go, waiting in line for so long, and you had somebody who was disabled. Also, he waited in line but just couldn't take it anymore, and he decided he was just going to get out of his car and go to walk into Rev Tax.
Was really unfortunate as well.
But Rev Tax, I give kudos to them. They were doing what they were told to do, doing their job. So great job.
You know how it is when the boss gives you a job to do that you're just like, oh God, do this job. You got to go and do what the boss says.